First contact paradox. The Confederation vessel Eternal Wisdom hung in space like a crystalline dream, its quantum sensors prodding the small blue planet below. High Admiral Zirak watched the holographic display with all four of his eyes, mandibles clicking in confusion. Impossible, he chittered. Run the scan again. The ship's AI complied, but the results remained unchanged. The planet below, Earth, simultaneously showed evidence of primitive fossil fuel usage and inexplicable quantum manipulation. Vehicles burning hydrocarbons shared roads with devices that seemed to bend space-time itself. They're an impossibility, Science Director Venra stated, her luminescent tendrils pulsing with agitation. By all known development models, a species cannot possess quantum technology while still burning fossil fuels. It defies every sociological principle we've established. Zirak studied the readings again. The humans had no unified planetary government, fought among themselves with primitive projectile weapons, and yet they had somehow developed technologies that the Confederation's best minds had deemed theoretically impossible. Prepare a first contact team, Zirak ordered, but with maximum caution protocols. There's something about these humans we're missing. The first contact meeting was held in a facility the humans called Dave's Diner, a choice that left the Confederation delegation baffled. Their representatives included the world's leading quantum physicists, yet they insisted on meeting in an establishment that served something called bottomless coffee. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's chief negotiator, dunked a pastry into her coffee as she casually explained humanity's latest breakthrough in quantum tunneling. The equation she scrawled on a paper napkin made Venra's tendrils curl in disbelief. But this violates at least 3 fundamental laws of physics. The science director protested. Oh yeah, Dr. Chen agreed cheerfully. We just kind of figured if the universe wasn't doing what the equations said it should, maybe we had the wrong equations. The implications were staggering. Where Confederation species spent centuries meticulously building upon established principles, humans simply tried things. They broke rules they didn't even know existed. They survived failures that should have annihilated them, learned from impossible successes, and seemed to treat the laws of physics more like polite suggestions. As the meeting concluded, Zirak received an urgent message from Confederation Command. Similar reports were coming in from across human space. A colony on Mars had casually solved a quantum computing problem that had stumped Confederation scientists for millennia. A research station in Antarctica had accidentally discovered a way to manipulate gravity while trying to make better ice cream. A teenager in Nebraska had built a working fusion reactor for a science fair project. Have we made first contact with a civilization? Zirak wondered aloud. Or with something else entirely? The question would haunt the Confederation for years to come. The quantum riddle. The Confederation's Grand Scientific Assembly was in chaos. Thousands of the galaxy's brightest minds gathered to debate what many were calling the human paradox. Holographic displays showed increasingly bizarre data from Earth and its colonies. They're using quantum entanglement to make better coffee machines, announced Professor Ktal, his crystalline form vibrating with distress. Coffee machines. Do they have any idea of the computational power they're casually playing with? The assembly hall erupted in fresh debate. Humans weren't just breaking the rules of technological progression. They were apparently unaware such rules existed. Where other species carefully built upon established principles over centuries, humans seemed to stumble into revolutionary discoveries while trying to solve mundane problems. Dr. Marcus Wong, Earth's representative to the assembly, looked distinctly uncomfortable as he faced the gathered aliens. He hadn't expected to be here. He'd been chosen simply because he was the only human physicist who remembered to check his emails that morning. Look, he said, scratching his head, we just try things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they really don't, and we have to evacuate 3 city blocks. But we learn from it all. The assembly fell silent. The casual mention of learning from catastrophic failures was precisely what terrified them about humans. Other species carefully simulated and tested innovations over decades. Humans just tried things. The silence was broken by urgent alerts. A quantum anomaly had been detected in the Carina sector, a rapidly expanding void that defied known physics. The Confederation's finest minds had been studying the phenomenon for months without progress. Actually, Dr. Wong said, peering at the data, this looks a lot like what happened when my daughter tried to use her quantum homework helper to cheat at video games. Have you tried reversing the polarity? The suggestion was so absurd, so unscientific, that several senior scientists immediately began composing formal protests. But one young researcher, inspired by human methods, actually tried it. The anomaly collapsed. How? Demanded Professor Call. How did you know that would work? Oh, I didn't, Wong admitted. But when something weird happens with quantum mechanics, reversing the polarity works about 60% of the time. The other 40%, well, that's why we have really good insurance. As the implications sank in, the assembly began to understand. Humans weren't just another spacefaring species. They were something entirely different, a species that had somehow turned reckless experimentation and learning from failure into a sustainable methodology. The revelation was interrupted by a new crisis. The quantum anomaly had been contained, but its collapse had revealed something far more terrifying. Ancient structures of clearly artificial origin, previously hidden in subspace, structures that were beginning to wake up. Well, said Dr. Wong, already reaching for his tablet, this looks interesting. Anyone want to help me try something probably dangerous? The Confederation was about to learn that sometimes humanity's chaotic approach to problem solving was exactly what the universe needed. Primal innovation. The ancient structures hung in subspace like dormant leviathans, their impossible geometries defying conventional analysis. The Confederation's greatest minds had spent 3 weeks studying them, producing thousands of pages of careful observations and theoretical models. The humans, meanwhile, had sent a small research vessel named Bob. You named your advanced research vessel Bob? Asked Admiral Zirak, all 4 eyes blinking in confusion. Oh, the ship's actual name is the Quantum Statistical Analysis Platform 7, explained Captain Maya Patil, her holographic image flickering slightly. But that's a mouthful, and Bob from engineering did most of the work putting it together, so we just call it Bob. Before Zirak could process this explanation, alarms blared across both ships. The ancient structures were powering up, their surfaces rippling with energy patterns that shouldn't exist in normal space. Fascinating, breathed Science Director Venra, her tendrils coiling tightly. The energy signatures suggest these structures are older than our galaxy itself. We must establish observation protocols immediately. Hey, has anyone tried hitting them with a tachyon beam yet? Interrupted Dr. James Rodriguez, Bob's chief scientist. He was eating something called a breakfast burrito while manipulating complex quantum controls with his free hand. The Confederation scientists were horrified. You can't just randomly fire tachyon beams at ancient structures of unknown origin. Professor Cattell protested. The potential consequences. Too late. Rodriguez announced cheerfully. Already did it while we were talking. Look at this. The nearest structure had absorbed the tachyon beam and was now pulsing with a regular rhythm. Data streamed across their screens. Data that finally made sense. It's some kind of quantum computer network. Venra realized, her tendrils glowing with excitement. The tachyon beam initiated a boot sequence. But how did you know? Didn't. Rodriguez shrugged, finishing his burrito. But we found some similar patterns in a quantum archaeology dig on Mars last month. Tried the tachyon beam thing there, and it worked pretty well. Only caused one small temporal paradox, and we fixed that with duct tape. The Confederation delegation chose not to ask about the duct tape. As they studied the activated network, a chilling truth emerged. The structures weren't just computers. They were automated weapons platforms, created by a long-vanished civilization to guard against some ancient threat. The threat that, according to the data now streaming through subspace, was about to return. The calculations are clear, Venra announced grimly. We have approximately 72 hours before something emerges from intergalactic space, something these weapons were designed to fight. So we have 3 days to figure out how to use technology that's billions of years old to fight an unknown cosmic horror, Captain Patel asked. She grinned. Sounds like a normal Tuesday. Dr. Rodriguez, break out the emergency coffee supply. And someone wake up Bob from engineering. He's good at fixing old stuff. Zirak watched in fascination as the human crew sprang into action. Where his own people would have established committees and drafted proper research protocols, the humans simply started trying things. They made mistakes, corrected them, made different mistakes, and somehow moved forward through a process that looked like chaos but produced remarkable results. Within hours, they had accessed the weapon's primary systems. Within a day, they had adapted them to interface with both human and Confederation technology. The process involved 3 minor explosions, 1 case of accidental time travel, and something the humans called a quantum oops, but progress was undeniable. As the deadline approached, Zirak realized something profound. The ancient civilization that built these weapons and the threat they were designed to fight, they had both followed logical, predictable patterns. Perhaps that was why neither had survived. Humanity's chaos, their willingness to defy logic and learn from failure, might be exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. The question was, would it be enough? The ancient threat. Space itself seemed to shudder as the intergalactic void tore open. The combined fleets of humanity and the Confederation hung in defensive formation around the ancient weapons platforms, watching as something emerged from the rift. Something that shouldn't exist. That's not great, Captain Patel observed, staring at the monstrosity that filled their view screens. The entity defied description, its form shifting between states of matter in ways that made observers' brains hurt. Where it passed, the laws of physics began to break down. It's a type omega reality deviation, announced Professor Catal, his crystalline form clouded with fear. A cosmic horror that consumes universal constants. The ancients must have locked it away in a dimension where our physics doesn't apply. And now it's back, Zirak added grimly. The weapons platforms are responding, but their attacks are ineffective. They watched as the ancient weapons fired, their quantum-based attacks dissipating harmlessly against the entity's impossibility. The being seemed to absorb the energy, growing stronger with each hit. Of course they're not working, Dr. Rodriguez muttered, furiously typing at his console while simultaneously building what looked like a small robot out of spare parts and snack wrappers. The weapons are too logical. They're following strict mathematical principles. You can't fight chaos with order. What do you suggest? Venra asked, her tendrils writhing with anxiety as the entity drew closer. Something stupid, Rodriguez grinned. Hey Bob, remember that quantum probability drive you built last week? The one that technically shouldn't work. Bob from engineering looked up from his own project, which appeared to involve rewiring a coffee maker into something distinctly more dangerous. The one that nearly turned the ship inside out. Sure thing, boss. Perfect. And Captain, remember how we accidentally created that time loop while testing the weapons? The one we fixed with duct tape? Patil asked. Are you suggesting? Yep. We're going to combine them. All of our mistakes, all of our impossible solutions, everything that shouldn't work but somehow does. We're going to build something so illogical it circles right back around to making sense. The Confederation scientists watched in horror as the humans began implementing their plan. They were combining technologies in ways that violated every known principle of engineering. They were introducing random variables into quantum equations. They were, essentially, fighting impossibility with impossibility. This is madness, Cutol protested. You can't just. He was interrupted by a massive surge of energy. The humans had done something. The space around their ships began to twist, reality itself bending as their combined impossibilities took effect. The entity, for the first time, showed something that might have been concern. "Fire everything," Patel commanded. And Bob, "Hit that big red button you definitely weren't supposed to install." The resulting cascade of events defied description. The quantum probability drive created paradoxes that the time loop instantly resolved. The duct-tape temporal fixes generated quantum fluctuations that the ancient weapons absorbed and amplified. Reality bent, twisted, and then snapped back into place with devastating force. The entity, faced with chaos greater than its own, began to retreat. But the humans weren't done. "You know what this needs?" Rodriguez asked, holding up his hastily constructed robot. "One more impossibility." He pressed a button, and the robot began to play what he called death metal music through the quantum communication arrays, somehow converting the sound waves into weaponized probability. The entity, confronted with human ingenuity at its most absurd, finally yielded. It collapsed in on itself, drawn back through the rift which sealed behind it. In the silence that followed, Zurak turned to Captain Patel. "How?" he asked simply. "How did you know that would work?" "We didn't," she admitted, helping Bob fix a console that was now somehow running on coffee instead of power. "But here's the thing about humans. We're really good at surviving things that should have killed us. We just keep trying stuff until something works." As the Confederation fleet began damage assessment and recovery operations, Zurak pondered this response. Humanity's greatest strength, he realized, wasn't their technology or their intelligence. It was their absolute refusal to accept impossible as an answer. Evolution's children. 3 months after the entity event, or as humans had started calling it, that time we duct-taped reality. The Confederation's Grand Assembly gathered for an unprecedented session. The massive chamber was packed with representatives from every known species, all gathered to address what many were calling the human question. High Admiral Zurak stood before the assembly, his formal carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights. "We face a crucial decision," he began. "Humanity has proven themselves to be unique. Their methods are chaotic, their solutions defy logic, and their very existence challenges everything we thought we knew about civilization's progress." The chamber erupted in overlapping discussions. Some representatives argued for restricting human expansion, fearing their unpredictable nature. Others advocated for closer alliance, seeing their chaos as a necessary complement to Confederation order. Dr. Sarah Chen, now Earth's official representative, sat quietly drinking coffee from a mug that occasionally flickered in and out of quantum states. Next to her, Bob from engineering was absent-mindedly fixing a broken universal translator with what appeared to be a paperclip and quantum-entangled bubble gum. "The truth," Zurak continued, mandibles clicking thoughtfully, "is that we need humanity precisely because they are different. While we pursued careful, logical progress, they embraced chaos and learned to thrive in it. They don't just think outside the box, they question why boxes need to exist at all." Science Director Venra's hologram flickered to life beside him. "Our studies of the ancient weapons platforms revealed something extraordinary," she announced, her tendrils rippling with excitement. "The civilization that built them was like us, logical, methodical, brilliant. But they fell because they couldn't adapt to chaos. They could only fight patterns with patterns." Meanwhile, Professor Catal added, his crystalline form shimmering, "Humans are out there turning coffee makers into quantum computers because, and I quote, it seemed like a fun thing to try during lunch break." Dr. Chen stood up, straightening her slightly singed lab coat. "Look," she said, "we know we're weird. We break rules we didn't know existed. We solve problems by trying impossible things until they work. We treat the laws of physics like guidelines, and we got a concerning addiction to duct tape. But we're also really, really good at surviving things that should kill us." She gestured to Bob, who had somehow fixed the translator, and accidentally invented a new form of faster-than-light communication in the process. We're not better than you. We're just different. You understand how the universe works. We figure out how to make it work differently. Apart, we're incomplete. Together, Zirac finished, we might just be unstoppable. The Assembly voted overwhelmingly to create a new position within the Confederation, the Department of Human Solutions. Its official mission was to apply human creativity to impossible problems. Its unofficial mission, as Dr. Rodriguez put it, was to try weird stuff until the universe gives up and lets it work. In the years that followed, the partnership transformed both humanity and the Confederation. Humans learned to temper their chaos with alien wisdom, while the Confederation learned to embrace a little uncertainty. They faced new challenges, new impossibilities, new cosmic horrors, but they faced them together, combining logic and chaos in ways that changed the very nature of what was possible. And somewhere in the depths of space, in a ship still named Bob, humans and aliens worked side by side, pushing the boundaries of what the universe would allow. They made mistakes, fixed them with improbable solutions, and kept moving forward. Because that's what humans do. They try the impossible, learn from failure, and somehow find ways to make the absurd into reality. The galaxy had started trembling at humanity's power, only to discover that humans were trembling too. With excitement at each new discovery, with joy at each impossible solution, with anticipation of what they might try next. It turned out that was exactly what the universe needed. The end.